welcome. I'd like to start today by just doing a very short reading from Mooji's book called Writing on Water. It's a collective, spontaneous utterances, insights and drawings. That's all it says on the front. So just pointings. And this is a short one from the book. It does not matter what your mind thinks. All thoughts are tourists. Make use of them, but do not offer tenancy to any concept. Don't be a landlord of a minefield. So I'll read that once again. It does not matter what your mind thinks. All thoughts are tourists. Make use of them, but do not offer tenancy to any concept. Don't be a landlord of a minefield. It's very easy to collect pointers to continue to wanting to learn more spiritual content, to read more spiritual books, learn more spiritual techniques, different meditations. Sometimes you may want to observe the essence of that. Is this new content, this new technique, this new book, this new video, is it there to bring you back home, back to your center? Or is it another thing you can add to yourself to say, yes, I've watched this spiritual teacher's videos, or I've read this book, and now that's something I can add to myself. The one who's read all of these books. And sometimes there's a need or an urge, thinking that you may need more time. I may need to read all of these books first before I can start this presence journey, before I can start my journey. And so perhaps just bring some awareness to that, to see if that's bringing up any hindrance for you or any delay. Is there any book that's in the way of your presence? The mind may play that trick to say, once you've read this, then you can learn to become present, or you can begin your journey. And even the words spiritual, or the words together spiritual journey, even that can get in the way, because it's just simply labels. But it can become another thing in the mind to achieve. You can tell people, I'm on this spiritual journey now. And again, it's something you've added to yourself. The identity that's now has achieved all these other things, and now it's going to achieve spirituality. So often teachers mention perhaps not to, or perhaps they give caution to sharing in detail about your own journey you're taking, your practice, because the ego can slip in there and take hold of something. For instance, you may wake up very early in the morning before sunrise and do your sadhana, your morning practice, your morning meditations, and we all have a natural instinct, a natural urge to share with others as well. That's how we connect, and it may come out in a conversation that, yes, I meditate 3 hours a day before sunrise, I get up at this time, and they may respond in, wow, that's incredible, how do you do that? And then suddenly the ego may grasp that praise, and now you may think, oh, I like this, I like how this feels, maybe I can share this with more people, and maybe there's nothing wrong with sharing, but if it's affecting your own practice, where is that sharing coming from? Is a sharing there to help somebody else, to say, perhaps you can try some meditation in the morning and see how it affects the rest of your day? Or is it there to advertise? Is the ego slipped in and now it's talking for you to say yes? And it may be in a very subtle way as well. You may not shout it from the rooftops that you're on this spiritual quest and to become enlightened, and you can use lots of other words there as well, but even in a subtle way it can come in, and you may walk away from that comment, not maybe with maybe something distasteful about it. You may thought, oh, it didn't seem quite, there may not even be a word for it because it's so subtle, but often in our awareness it will come up. There'll be some kind of, a subtle change of energy, maybe of, well, I didn't like, or perhaps it wasn't the best way to communicate that in that particular way. You can feel the effect of it, like a pebble dropping in a lake. You see the ripples there, and you may feel the ripples of energy in you, and it may not feel positive, and it's almost a good indicator as well. Okay, that's something that my awareness doesn't like, and it's not in tune, it's not in alignment of where I'm heading. And so it's a constant learning process as well. It's not criticizing that, okay, I can never share that again and close that off. No, it's just bringing back the connection to your center. So if there was a next time you were to share something with a friend, and perhaps the center will dictate what's in alignment. You may not need to go into details about how long you meditate for or what time you get up. You may just simply share that meditation in the morning for you is a chance to cleanse. It's a chance to begin the day feeling very light, feeling very connected, and coming from your center, from your presence. When you're communicating, what's needed to be said will be said, and the sincerity is almost a byproduct of being in that place, because there's no I in there that wants to be inflated, that wants to say, hey, look at me, look at my achievements. And without that identification, what is said is very genuine, and the intention you have, that will come through the words you share. So you may have the intention that you want to help the person you're with. You may want to share something to inspire and help, and say, this is something that's helped me, and I want to communicate, to share my experience to help you. So that's something to keep in mind. I've been playing with the sound quality on here, and I think last week's podcast there may have been some some pops in the sound. When you use certain words that produce like an S sound or a P sound. So I apologise for that, and I've decided to, put the microphone a little bit further away, and so it may not, perhaps the sound may not be as clear as when the mic is close, but I thought I would opt for something that's more listenable than potentially better quality in some ways as well. So so I hope you can hear me fine, and it's hopefully this will be good enough for absorbing what is said, and that's the most important thing. So perhaps to share something that I'm going through at the moment. I think over the years there's been an urge. There's been the urge to find a partner, and it's of course a natural urge. Many of us will have certain phases of our life where maybe we prefer to be single or not involved with anyone, or we may be focused on other areas of our life, like our careers, and maybe other, family as well, taking care of family. There's many things that can absorb our time, and so I've been aware of this urge for the last couple of years, and there's been some action taken, joining a website or an app, and then there's been some, stepping back from that also. You can almost sense, when I mention, using your presence, your awareness as your compass, your guide. And so I had some, things come up that I thought, okay, let's perhaps step away from this action. And now I'm in the place at the moment where I'm actively seeking a partner. So, there's many, ways of doing it online at the moment, and so I find myself just observing the reactions of doing so. So I remember when, joining a site, there was lots of, pain coming up, thinking, with, lots of thoughts of, I'm not good enough, and, thoughts of, who would want to be with someone like me. And so it's just observing these conditional thoughts, and it's very easy to take these thoughts personally, to be closely associated with the thoughts. They're my thoughts. This is what I think about myself. But I'm gradually putting my awareness on them to see them for what they are. That they are just thoughts. Perhaps some past conditioning of where I've been through some painful experiences that may have made me feel insignificant or not good enough. And perhaps it's a good thing as well, perhaps because if it's coming up, then it's inside of me, and now it's coming to the surface. So it's almost a chance to clean out, any trapped energy in this particular area. So when I first, typed in a profile of, about me, and then you can, again, there'll be the thoughts come up, thinking, I don't have anything to really say here. What do I do? And the negative voice may say there's nothing interesting here to share. And if I was to look at other profiles, and again there'd be the voice thinking, oh, you're not good enough to be with this person, or why on earth would this person be interested in someone like you, your personality, or my appearance. And so I'm just aware of what's happening. That's, generally the first step. Because often, that maybe that awareness is bypassed, and we try and, find a fix for it as well. We think, okay, I need to, do something. I need to, remedy this very quickly. And perhaps another way is just to be open to these thoughts and feelings, not having to slam the door on them and pretend they're not there, or compress them, with another action. So just accepting how things are in the moment. So in the moment, perhaps I can be aware that there's no confidence there of reaching out to somebody, or there's resistance there. There's some, trapped negative energy that almost like a siren that's just flashing, that's saying, that's saying that this is not possible, that this will never happen for you. And so I've been doing my best to observe that. And this is just my personal example, but this can be applied to anything else. There may be an area of your life or a task or something that's been done where it brings up the pain. If you're seeing a certain person, a family member or a friend, it may evoke. And perhaps in some ways there can be some gratitude for that, because it's almost, it took that action or interaction with somebody for that to come up to the surface. Because there's many places things can hide. And it can seem like a funny analogy to use, but there's lots of corners where things hide, and we may feel like, yes, I'm doing very well and in life, or I'm very calm, I feel very connected, but then there'll be one situation that happens that suddenly brings up a lot of stuff, and it took that situation for that to happen. That stuff was always there, but it just wasn't activated until this situation happens. So life's got a funny way of it's there to it's just to remind ourselves it's there not to make us happy. It's not there to serve us. And I hear this pointer quite often from, I think it's from Eckhart. Life is there to wake us up, and it's something I need to constantly remind myself of. Because when you fall back into the mind, the mind says life's there to make you happy. The mind says people are there to make you happy. You may read, some profiles of, where people literally write, I'm looking for somebody to make me happy. And, through the maturity of the practice we've undertaken, we can see that this is perhaps the mind talking here. I want someone to complete me, to make me happy. And we, of course, know the mind, all happiness in, mind happiness, egoic happiness is temporary. It can never be fully satisfied. There's going to be, a temporary relief, and then suddenly there's going to be maybe some pain there. So perhaps we can just pause a few moments while I've actually forgotten to do my nose breathing, my nasal breathing practice in the last day or so, or I haven't done it as often as I would have liked. So that's something I could just hear the whistles as I'm trying to breathe through my nose, which feels quite closed up. So if you hear that, I'm attempting to breathe through my nose. I was listening to Krishnamurti, one of his talks, and just want to share a line that I remember when he's talking about investigation. And this is similar to what Mooji talks about in regards to self-inquiry. And Krishnamurti said, investigate. I guess I'm paraphrasing what he said. I won't be able to recall how elegant he said this, but investigate without an investigator. So there's no lens of bias there. You're looking at something that you've already shaded in a certain colour. So you're investigating exactly as you see something. So there's no colour of opinion or judgment, and you're not bringing a background of knowledge or a point of view to it. And that seemed to really resonate with me, and immediately I realised how difficult that can be. That, perhaps some maturity, some further practice is required before this neutral observation is, can be carried out. We can all observe, but perhaps right now our observation is coloured. It's coloured by our identity. So that's something that really resonated with me. And this can be related to anything. Again, it could be a life situation. It could be, how we view people. Are we viewing them with the image we've got for that person, the life history of that person? Or are we seeing them exactly how they are in this moment? And Krishnamurti said, it's like you're always seeing somebody for the first time. And you can't see someone for the first time if you're carrying the image there of, yes, that's this person's name, and I know what their personality is like and their nature, and I may not smile at them this time because they annoyed me last time I spoke to them on the phone, and they always go on about this. And so you're bringing that energy, that image, you're putting an image in between yourself and the person there. And again, this I almost sensed the difficultiness there, or I sensed the lack of capacity in me to do this. I thought about people I've recently spoken to on the phone, and there's been almost a density of when I'm talking, there's the image of that person. So I'm kind of talking through the image of this person. And this is where, we become like almost on autopilot when we talk. And this is, that's another indicator that perhaps you're not fully present when you're communicating. And this may mean that when you do communicate from a completely present place, where you're not communicating through an image, or you're absorbing them as they are in a moment, then maybe your speech may change, maybe your facial expressions will change because they see you in their image. And so they recognize, how you normally act. And so when that changes, perhaps they may comment saying, oh, something's a bit different there, or, they may even say you're acting a bit strange or weird. And that's something that perhaps can be explained to them. Because seeing somebody for the first time, you may smile more, without effort. You won't need, X, Y, and Z to be working in your life to think, okay, yes, I'm in a good mood now. I can give myself the joy of smiling because all these things are working for me in my life situation. And you may find, your face brighten. You're, staring at them in wonderment, and you're, listening with even more attention and clarity, and that energy sometimes can even evoke pain in another person, because that the power of presence there, if somebody's in their own pain body or are not present themselves, I think either it can bring them into presence themselves, or there can be a reaction to it, a resistance, because the mind or pain doesn't like the presence. As soon as it feels it, it may fight against it. So you may even have an adverse reaction. The person will think, why are you in such a good mood? Or, they may comment, and you may feel that there, or you may notice that they too are calming, and they're listening with deep listening, with attention. You may find that also. So that's just something to be aware of, that if you do get an adverse reaction, it's not personal. It's perhaps you can just be aware that maybe there's some pain that has arisen in them. And it's almost, it's being reflected back, because you're not, in the face of your presence. That can just simply be a reaction that's happening there. So again, in these moments of silence, there's no waiting. There's no checking your phone or device to think, has it stopped? Has it stopped playing? But perhaps there can be maybe a chance for relief in these quiet moments, in these gaps between the words. Perhaps it's a chance for the silence to absorb into your awareness. So I'm just going to continue reading from the Miracle of Mindfulness. And if you feel that, me reading these books in the episodes is helpful, then please feel free to drop me a tweet, or, if you're listening to this on YouTube, feel free to comment, or you even drop me a private message if you don't wish to be in public. So there's a few ways on Twitter or my Patreon account or on YouTube as well. because I was just thinking, of other books, that I would perhaps share as a reading. There's the New Earth, which is something I will look to read. And in the past, with the Power of Now, I read it in parts and not in its entirety as a recording. I jumped about here or there, but only recently I've it's been more consistent. So especially with the book we're reading now, we're reading it from cover to cover. So just wondering if that's something that's beneficial, if that's something that you would like to continue happening. Instead of me reading some of the book privately, then coming back and reading a random portion later, and for this and of course this is helping me too. It's encouraging me to read more of these books. I think that's one of the reasons I began to read in the episodes, to almost help myself as well. I was almost going to start reading from a fiction book that I'm reading at the moment before realizing I was on the wrong book. I'm also reading a crime novel as well, so yeah, so we were talking about breathing the previous time. I think we were talking about quiet breathing and also counting breaths as well, using numbers to measure the in-breath and out-breath, and almost extend our breath as well. If you wish to have 20 minutes of deep breathing, just to re-energize and refocus the mind and body, there was the exercise to extend the count of your breaths as well. So this passage is called "Every Act is a Rite." Suppose there is a towering wall from the top of which one can see vast distances, but there is no apparent means to climb it, only a thin piece of thread hanging over the top and coming down both sides. A clever person will tie a thicker string onto one end of the thread, walk over to the other side of the wall, then pull on the thread, bringing the string to the other side. Then he will tie the end of the string to a strong rope and pull the rope over. When the rope has reached the bottom of one side and is secured on the other side, the wall can be easily scaled. Our breath is such a fragile piece of thread, but once we know how to use it, it can become a wondrous tool to help us surmount situations which would otherwise seem hopeless. Our breath is the bridge from our body to our mind, the element which reconciles our body and mind, and which makes possible oneness of body and mind. Breath is aligned to both body and mind, and it alone is the tool which can bring them both together, illuminating both and bringing both peace and calm. Many persons and books discuss the immense benefits that result from correct breathing. They report that a person who knows how to breathe is a person who knows how to build up endless vitality. Breath builds up the lungs, strengthens the blood, and revitalizes every organ in the body. They say that proper breathing is more important than food. And all of these statements are correct. Years ago, I was extremely ill. After several years of taking medicine and undergoing medical treatment, my condition was unimproved. So I turned to the method of breathing, and thanks to that, was able to heal myself. Breath is a tool. Breath itself is mindfulness. The use of breath as a tool may help one obtain immense benefits, but these cannot be considered as ends in themselves. These benefits are only the byproducts of the realization of mindfulness. In my small class in meditation for non-Vietnamese, there are many young people. I've told them that each one can meditate an hour each day. That's good, but it's nowhere near enough. You've got to practice meditation when you walk, stand, lie down, sit and work while washing your hands, washing the dishes, sweeping the floor, drinking tea, talking to friends, or whatever you are doing. While washing the dishes, you might be thinking about the tea afterwards, and so try to get them out of the way as quickly as possible in order to sit and drink tea. But that means that you are incapable of living during the time you are washing the dishes. When you are washing the dishes must be the most important thing in your life. Just as when you're drinking tea must be the most important thing in your life. When you're using the toilet, let that be the most important thing in your life. And so on. Chopping wood is meditation. Carrying water is meditation. Be mindful 24 hours a day, not just during the 1 hour you may allot for formal meditation or reading scripture and reciting prayers. Each act must be carried out in mindfulness. Each act is a rite, a ceremony. Raising your cup of tea to your mouth is a rite. Does the word rite seem too solemn? I use that word in order to jolt you into the realization of the life and death matter of awareness. So we have reached part 3 or chapter 3 of the book. And just to touch upon what we just read, it really encompasses the essence of the practice there. The essence that, whatever is happening in the moment, that's all that exists. Which is why, in this case, Thai has talked about it is the most important thing in your life. It's the only thing in your life, this moment. And this, in some ways, this illuminates the activity of mind. And it illuminates it because it's easy to see that this is never done. When I'm drinking tea or, washing dishes, my mind is elsewhere. And Thai used the example in a few chapters ago where mindfulness is it collects everything together, and it's almost one focus of attention. And how powerful that is. Instead of our attention being dispersed, some may be on our spouse or partner, some may be on our job, some may be on what this person said, and ruminating about whether you should have bought that pair of shoes or jacket, and how dispersed our attention is. So perhaps that's something we can all try, the next time. Perhaps we can designate an activity the next time you make a cup of tea or coffee, or the next time you have a meal. Perhaps you can designate that as a time to put this into practice, to experience what this is like, where each movement, is talked about as a ceremony. There's importance there. Nothing is missed. Nothing is a means to an end. The lifting of the cup is itself the meditation. It's not simply to get the tea into you and readying the next sip. Each movement there is all important. So I'm going to end the episode here with a plan or the intention of recording again in the next couple of days. So I thought, instead of making this into a longer episode than it is at the moment, I thought maybe it's best to end it here and perhaps record again in a couple of days instead of, this week seems to have flown by. So I'll set the intention to record sooner than my previous episodes. And perhaps we can end by rereading a few lines from this last passage. Chopping wood is a meditation. Carrying water is meditation. Be mindful 24 hours a day, not just during the 1 hour you may allot for formal meditation or reading scripture and reciting prayers. Each act must be carried out in mindfulness. Each act is a rite, a ceremony. Raising your cup of tea to your mouth is a rite. Thank you for joining me here today, and I wish you well in this moment, and I'll speak to you again very soon. Take care.